Good evening, everyone. It's just about 6:30, so we're going to get started with our presentation. Welcome to our online SKYWARN. This is our winter SKYWARN. If you've joined us in the past for our basic SKYWARN, that traditionally covers summer severe weather such as thunderstorms and tornadoes. With this focus, we focus more on the day-to-day aspects of winter weather such as snow and ice. If this is the first time you've been to an online class with us, a couple things to point out. We mentioned this for those that logged on early. In the handout section, we have two things for you. First, we have a certificate of completion. In addition, this whole presentation is in a PDF format, so you can download that if we have any technical issues, and also if you want to do some review afterwards. Your microphones have been muted, so you can kind of kick back and relax, enjoy the presentation. If you want to see less of me and more of the presentation, if you're on a PC, just stretch it and you can make the presentation larger. If you're on a mobile device, the app is really nice for this. Just swipe to the right and you can switch back between full screen me or full screen the presentation. At any point, if you have a question, ask it in the chat itself. We get that directly. I probably won't get to the questions until the end. It's just me for tonight, so I'll save the questions for the end. But if you have any questions about what we're presenting, certainly ask that. And as I mentioned, that certificate is in the handout section. One last thing, if you're just joining us, you know of a friend that loves the weather and wishes they could have joined tonight, they have two options. This is being recorded. We'll post it on YouTube. In addition, on our website, we'll show you how we post a lot of our past recorded training. Before we get to the agenda, I want to ask a couple questions of you. I always like to poll the audience and see how we are in terms of winter weather, or if you've been to a class like this with us before. So our first question is, what is your favorite type of winter weather? I love winter weather. That's why I love teaching this class. Do you like snow, sleet, freezing rain? Do you hate winter, or do you love it all? So go ahead and vote on that and let me know what you think. And I see that I'll just wait about another 10 seconds. We have got the majority of you have voted. Very, very good. All right. And it looks like most love snow. Nobody for sleet or freezing rain. I got probably one person that hates winter and one person that loves it all. So very, very good. It's good to see most of us liking winter weather, especially taking this class itself. So very, very good. Next question I want to ask of you is, have you been to one of these classes before? And not just a spotter class in person, but maybe virtual, maybe you've done it online, maybe even at another office. So I'm just kind of curious. I like to gauge the audience for how you've done classes in the before, if you've done it. So we've got about 3/4 of us voted, about 60% no, and 33% yes. So that's really good. We've got a lot of new folks in here, so that's good for that. So let me show those poll results, and you can see again a lot of new folks into the SKYWARN. So that's very, very good as we try to reach a new audience. Thank you for participating. I know we got a few new folks that have joined us. You haven't missed anything. That's why we do the questions in the beginning. If you want to see more of the presentation, just stretch your screen, or on the app, you can just swipe to the right and see it full screen. So our agenda, the class is about an hour. The beginning, we talk about the weather service. Why do we need spotters? We have all this fancy equipment. We're going to talk about the winter outlook for this year. We're going to go through some preparedness tips for winter, and then focus on the types of winter weather we can get in eastern North Carolina: nor'easters, snowstorms, ice storms, even coastal flooding. Then the second half of the class is all about reporting information to us, snow and ice measurements, and then we'll certainly give you a chance to ask questions at the end. So we're thinking about an hour for this class, maybe a little less depending on how quickly we go through. Our main mission in the Weather Service is to protect life and property. So we issue watches, warnings, and advisories to let you know about that. So yes, we do a 7-day forecast, but what really separates us is we're anticipating that bad weather, blizzards, hurricanes, tornadoes, and letting you know about that information. If you're from Eastern North Carolina, your local office is here in Newport Morehead City. We'll talk about that in a second. You may be watching us from all across the country. This is a virtual class. Anybody is welcome to join us. If you are outside of our area, I'll just forward on your information to your local office. Every dot on this map represents a local National Weather Service office. These other colors just represent the regions we're broken up into. But I want you to see that we have over 100 offices in the Weather Service serving you. Those men and women are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to serve that mission of protection of life and property. Here locally, if you're in Eastern North Carolina, this is our coverage area, anywhere shaded in yellow. So that includes places like Greenville and Jacksonville, and certainly the Outer Banks. Up across northeastern North Carolina, you're covered by the Richmond or Wakefield office. Central North Carolina is covered by Raleigh, and the Wilmington office covers far southeastern North Carolina. You'll also notice that we cover out into the water, including the local sounds and rivers and the ocean. So we do a marine forecast as well. And in fact, that's probably one of our more popular forecasts for the local office. I mentioned this before, we are open 24/7, 365. Much like police and firefighters and hospitals and first responders, we are here for emergencies. A typical staffing is at least 2 to 3 people, but the example in the upper left, Hurricane Florence, we were all here and we slept here. We have a reinforced building. This is my office in the upper right. My favorite license plate, Lake Effect. I do like Lake Effect snow. We're a brick building and we have hurricane shutters. So like a lot of Weather Service offices, we're a location that's reinforced. In our case, we're up a little higher, so we don't have to worry about flooding. So we stay here when the weather's bad to keep you safe. The best way to get information from us is certainly our website. It's weather.gov/Morehead City, or if you live outside of the area, just weather.gov, and you can click on the local part of the country you live in. Excellent information. Bookmark this website. The easiest thing is to click on the map where you live, or enter your city or zip code to get a forecast. And then you can go as in-depth as you want. If you just want a 7-day forecast, you can have that, or you can dive down into the website and get more. Since this is a winter forecast class, most of the websites are designed, if you add a /winter, you'll go to the winter page. So this is where you can get our official snowfall forecast. This is an example from one of the forecasts last winter. Also, for many years now, we've done snow probability, showing you what could be the worst case scenario or expect at least this amount of snow. And there's also some thresholds on there, 1/10 of an inch of snow, 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inches of snow. What % chance do you have for that? You can see it on a map or you can see it on a table. Our website is awesome, tremendous amount of information, but it's best to bookmark it and then kind of learn the website and save what you want. I mentioned in the beginning, by entering the zip code or city, you can get a 7-day forecast that has detailed text, or you can have an icon-based forecast. If you scroll down a little bit, there's an hour-by-hour forecast, and you might say, well, Eric, I got that on my phone. Why do I need that? The men and women of the local Weather Service office are making these forecasts, and we look at the same models that your phone looks at for a forecast. The difference is the human element really comes in. Is that model doing well? Is that model one that usually does well for us? What about our area? What do we tend to see? Those hourly weather forecasts, we can make those tweaks and really make an impact for your local forecast. A couple more slides, then we'll get into the winter presentation. There's a graphical forecast in addition to the hourly, so you can see what the weather's like, including winds and temperatures. And if you're a boater, you can see the wave height forecast as well out over the ocean. One thing that we do special when the weather turns severe are weather briefings. A lot of weather forecast offices, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, especially along the East Coast, there's a whole bunch of different icons. One is SKYWARN, can give you information about tonight's class, and right above it is a weather hazard briefing. If you click on that and we have bad weather, we will provide a PDF that gives you details on what we expect. Tonight, you're not going to see it. Our weather here locally is pretty quiet. The example to the left is from last February when we had snow, and the example on the right is the last time it got really cold here in the Carolinas. Single digits, even single digits below 0 after this snowfall event. We did a weather briefing for that. Again, that's on our website, weather.gov/Morehead City. I'm sure a lot of you are on social media. We are on social media as well, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and also most recently, Instagram. You can follow us, just search NWS Morehead City. The thing I want to point out on our YouTube page, this is an example from one of the video briefings last year. All of this training we're doing, if you have to step out for a moment, this is going to be on YouTube. If you cannot wait for the spring class, you want to learn more about tornadoes and severe weather, that's on YouTube already. So a lot of our training has been recorded so you can view it 24/7. Last thing I want to leave you with, we always get a question, do we have an app? We don't have an app in the Weather Service, but we do have a mobile site that can work on your mobile device. It can also work on your PC. It's mobile.weather.gov. You can get hourly forecast discussions from the local offices anywhere in the United States, and you can bookmark it and save it to your home screen. It will act very similar to an app. Again, that's mobile.weather.gov. A lot of these websites I'm throwing at you, remember you do have that PDF just in the extra section of handouts. There's two handouts there. One's a certificate and one is this presentation. So if I'm going too fast or you want to share this with others, be sure to check out the handout section of this presentation. So we covered the bases, who we are, what we do in the Weather Service. Now let's talk about SKYWARN. This is a program that is a volunteer program by the Weather Service. The goal is to provide ground truth reports of what's happening. And what that means is the radar may show us one thing and you tell us, yeah, it's really snowing, or hey, it's a rain snow mix, or is it accumulating? And these are some pictures showing that, yes, we do get snow here across eastern North Carolina. One thing I want to point out is how weather spotters really help us. You help us gauge how bad the weather is. So specifically with winter weather, a weather station may be reporting 32, 33 degrees and snow, but unless we have a webcam or eyes on the ground, is that sticking to the road? Is it just on grassy surfaces? Are we seeing ice on the roads? So that type of information is life-saving. We can add that to our warnings and our products to let folks know exactly what's happening outside. We do provide some science in this class. This is probably the most scientific thing we're going to talk about. You may say, you got Doppler radar. Why do you need spotters? And this is what we'll show you. The graphic on the right is a Doppler radar, a very, very useful tool, among others. We use satellite and surface observations to detect what's going on outside. But the point of this graphic is to show you that there are some limitations of the radar. The radar is pointed up at 0.5 degrees elevation. So the very lowest beam of the radar, as it gets farther and farther away, because the Earth is curved, that beam gets higher into the sky. So in this example, snow-producing clouds often can be very shallow, 5, 10, maybe 15,000 feet. So this example on the left, clouds that are really close to the radar, we can sample it really, really well. But as you get farther and farther away from the radar, that lowest beam may actually shoot over the clouds and the snow. So we may see some of it, but not the whole thing. We see this in the mountains of western North Carolina. We see this across the Outer Banks. We use other tools like satellite and surface observations to fill in those gaps, but spotters are also another way that we fill in those gaps to know what is actually happening. So bottom line, make your reports. Don't think that we don't need them. The other point of emphasis, and I hope you notice a theme, we need your reports. Every report is crucial. This map shows all of the airports across eastern North Carolina. If you're really into the weather or flying, you might know that PGV means Greenville, or ISO means Kinston, OAJ is Richlands, or over toward Jacksonville. So these are all airport identifiers. And we have information 24/7 from them. Wind, temperature, dew point, rainfall, excellent. But only a few sites, New Bern and Hatteras, actually have snowfall observers for us. So of all of those, only 2 report snowfall. Contrast that with this map. This is you. These are all the spotters in our area from our most recent training year. Look at all the spotters we have compared to the previous slide. So that shows how you fill in our gaps. There's more of you than the airports reporting snow. And please, if you like this class, share this with your friends and neighbors and people in our area. We still have some gaps. I know we have a lot of rural communities, but we have farmers and a lot of people that are into the weather because it's their livelihood. Let them know about this opportunity to really help the community in terms of weather prediction and what's going on. Before we get to the class about what can happen in our area, I do want to touch upon the winter outlook. This is produced by the Climate Prediction Center for the upcoming winter, which is December through February. The forecast with a strong La Nina is actually above normal temperatures across the south, including us, and below normal temperatures across the north. A couple things to point out with a climate forecast. It is just a forecast. It's actually divided into thirds, the chance of below normal, equal chances, or above normal. And it means more significance, the darker colors on this map. So this is almost 70% chance of above normal temperatures across Texas and southern New Mexico. That means we have a really strong signal that that's probably what's going to happen down there. As the colors lighten up, or as you get toward the white, we get toward even probabilities. We call that equal chances. That just means we don't have a strong signal. It could be below normal, near, or above normal. And the darker blues indicate a higher probability of below normal weather. So for us, we're toward the darker shading of orange, so it is a higher probability we'll have a mild winter. With that said, it just takes one storm. And that's not a catch-all. You can check in with me in March, December, January, and February probably will average out above normal. And that can be a correct forecast. But you still could have an ice storm in January. You still could have a major snowstorm in February. The overall forecast for the whole 3-month period could be correct, and you can still have winter. So don't let your guard down and think winter's not going to happen. We were talking in the office this last week. I think kind of captures the winter forecast. Did we have some cold, frosty mornings? Yes. Did Greenville and some places inland see snowflakes the other night? Yes. Have we been in the 60s and wearing t-shirts a lot? Yes. So that's probably our winter upcoming, overall mild, but we still can have some periods of cold, snow, and ice. As far as the precip forecast goes, again, the darker colors, higher probability of drier down toward Texas and New Mexico. The darker green, higher probability of wetter conditions. Here in the middle, slightly better chance we're drier than average, but it's kind of close to we don't have super strong signals across the Carolinas. So that's the climate forecast. Now we're going to get again into the crux of the class, all the hazards we can get. Snow and ice, cold outbreaks, wind, and the one thing unique to the coast are coastal flooding. We certainly can get some flooding, especially from the nor'easters we get. Did you know that this week is Winter Preparedness Week in North Carolina? If you want graphics like this, visit our website. It's mhx/wwaw. And again, this is in your PDF. Want to talk about 3 things for winter preparedness. The first is at home. We should have this done already. If you have a hurricane kit, you can probably check off your winter preparedness kit. You just want food, water, and medicine for 3 to 5 days. That's if you're out of power, you can't get out on the roads, you're able to hunker down at home. Again, if you have a hurricane kit from this past summer, you probably have a lot of these items. And not a bad idea to check up on your heating system, especially before we get into the real cold part of winter. More likely is on the road. While we don't have a ton of winter weather here, if you do any traveling to Raleigh or the mountains, you certainly want to winterize your vehicle. We're not talking snow chains and snow tires where we live, but are all your fluids topped off? Do you have good tread on your tire? How about your car battery? That type of thing. And if you must travel, especially again toward the mountains or outside of our area, or if you have to travel when we do have bad weather, just have some extra things in your, the back of your car in the trunk. Gloves, hat, a jacket. So if you do get stuck, you can stay warm. So not a huge deal here in Eastern North Carolina, but always a good thing to be prepared on the road. One thing I want to go back for the on the road forecast. One other really important thing is just check the forecast. You say, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you have some wiggle room in your travel plans, you can often plan around it. We know when snowstorms and ice storms are coming. If you can travel the day before or the day after, sometimes you can completely avoid it. I know our schedules are tight and sometimes you can't make adjustments, but if you can, check that forecast and make adjustments around the weather. The last one is preparedness for being outside. We're usually the person on the left. It's chilly. I always have to fight my kids to even put a jacket on down where we are. We used to live in upstate New York, so it doesn't feel too cold down here. But sometimes we get cold, and like in January of 2018, we did have extreme cold. So extra layers help. Don't forget about your head, your fingers with gloves, and even an extra pair of socks or thicker socks will make all the difference in the world. All right, it's just about 6:50. We're about 20 minutes into it. If you're just joining us or if you've been with us, we did all the homework, who we are, what the weather service is, the website, winter preparedness. Now, the fun stuff, winter storms, what makes it, and we'll talk about all the different types of storms we can get in the eastern part of the state. So much like a lot of weather has to have certain ingredients to happen. You can't just have cold weather and it snows. You have to have cold weather and moisture for clouds and precipitation. You can't just have cold weather and moisture. You need something to rise that air up called lift. So we need these certain ingredients in place for snow to happen or ice to happen. And that's why it's more rare where we live, because we're usually lacking the cold ingredient because we're so close to the ocean and we are a little bit farther south. So we'll talk about that first ingredient. Usually it's an area of high pressure to our north. For the younger people that have done weather lessons with us, you might say, well, Mr. Eric, high pressure is good weather. Yes, right where the area of high pressure is good weather, but the winds flow clockwise around an area of high pressure. So the winds can be from the north, and that will pull down some colder air from Canada or parts of the Northeast United States. So anytime we've had cold or ice, some type of high pressure or cold air mass has moved down into the Carolinas. That's one thing we're usually lacking. The thing we usually have is plenty of moisture. We're certainly humid in the summer. In the wintertime, we have moisture that comes in off the Atlantic Ocean or also the Gulf of Mexico. So we usually have that ingredient as well. If you have both the cold and moisture, you need something to kind of tie it all together. And we call this a source of lift. We're going to go over areas of low pressure and fronts here in a second. Those are the most important ones for us. I do want to show you two examples outside of our area that are pretty neat. One are mountains. If you've ever been to Beech Mountain, Banner Elk, Blowing Rock, out toward Asheville, the western part of our state, gorgeous. There's a reason why they see more precipitation, cold, and snow. They are on the windward side of the mountains. So the air hits the mountains, it rises up, cools and condenses, more precipitation, and they can get enhanced snow even off the Great Lakes. Whereas the lee side of the mountains, we don't tend to see as much. The air dries out and warms up. So kind of a neat phenomenon across the western part of the state. Also toward the Great Lakes, we don't see this on occasion off the Chesapeake Bay, maybe a little bit of bay effect snow for the Outer Banks. But pure lake effect snow is super cold air going over the relatively warm water. And as it goes over that water, that forces the air to rise because of that instability over the lake. You can get precipitation, and if it's cold enough, which it often is, you can get lake effect snow. And again, down toward us, we can on occasion have some flurries and snow showers in the Outer Banks because of a cold north wind coming down the Chesapeake Bay. By and large, though, our weather in the wintertime comes from fronts or areas of low pressure. A cold front, the example is on top. It's marked with a blue line with triangles that point to where it's going. And in this animation, notice this cold air really pushes its way in. It's very, very dense and heavy. So it abruptly lifts clouds, and this is where you can get some of the stronger thunderstorms in the summer, but also some wintry weather in the wintertime. It brings rain showers initially, but as that cold air comes in, we can change over to snow. Another way we can get snow in the wintertime is along a warm front. We have plenty of cold air in place. In the example on the bottom, it's heavy, it's dense, doesn't want to move in. As that warm air rides above it, it can create snow. And unfortunately, if that layer gets deep enough, eventually it changes over to wintry precipitation, which we'll show you here in a second. By far, our most dangerous winter weather usually occurs with a nor'easter. That's an area of low pressure that develops along the East Coast and moves off to the Northeast. It was named before satellites and weather radars because mariners would notice that the wind would kind of shift into the Northeast as this storm developed. Some of our major storms have been nor'easters, and it's all about the track. For us to get a snowstorm, we need the track to be far enough off the coast so that we are cold enough, but close enough to us to bring us moisture. What often happens is the track is right along the coast near the Gulf Stream. It's too close to us. We're 45, 50 degrees, showers, maybe even a thunderstorm. And then inland, Raleigh, Charlottesville, Washington, New York City, and Boston, being just a little bit farther inland, they are cold enough for snow. So for our storm track, it's very, very tricky. It's always about the storm track, even if you live up toward Raleigh. But for ours, it has to be perfectly far enough off the coast to cause an issue. So I like to provide examples. January, the first week of 2018, very, very snowy period. Here's our area of low pressure. Here's the coastline. And again, it's just far enough off. So here's our area of high pressure bringing in cold air, but it's close enough that the outer edge of the snow is reaching our area. This was a pretty decent snowstorm. A lot of folks will remember the cold afterwards. Here I live in Carteret County, so we had 1 to 2 inches of snow. That's about the most we get because we're so close to the ocean. But 7 to almost 8 inches, the northern part of our area. So between Greenville and down toward New Bern, Plymouth, Washington, places like that. So that's a pretty good snowfall for us. What you probably remember is the cold afterwards. This is January 7th, a couple days later. Whenever you have snow cover and a cold atmosphere in place, we get tremendously cold temperatures. Here down by the coast, single digits and teens because the water modifies it, the air temp, but Greenville and Washington, -1. So if you're a newcomer to the state, can we get cold? Yes. This is probably, this was a record cold, so it's not an every year thing, but that was pretty chilly. And if you are a newcomer, or even if you lived through this period, you may have forgotten, but we actually had ice on the sounds and local rivers. That's pretty impressive to be that cold for an extended period of time. And I remember here locally, Highway 24, whatever snow didn't melt, it was there for many, many days, wherever it was shady especially. So it kind of became a hard pack of snow and ice, even on the major roads. One of our forecasters, Tom Lanka, had saved this image. I'm really glad he did. This is tremendous. This is a satellite image looking down on eastern North Carolina. Wherever you see this white shading, that is snow cover. You can see some of the farmland across Hyde and Beaufort County. That's pretty cool, where you don't see it as much because of the darker soil type. And if you look really, really carefully, the eastern end of Pamlico Sound has ice. Roanoke and Croatan Sounds up toward Manio has ice. And the southern part of Albemarle Sound had ice as well. So pretty cold and pretty extended period there, first week of 2018. A couple weeks later, if you're a winter weather fan, it was a pretty good winter. We had more snow, but I want you to notice, again, areas of low pressure farther off the coast. If you're a snow lover, you don't want to track to your west, and you don't want to track too close to us. As you're looking at weather models, you want it just far enough off the coast so we stay cold and we get the snow. This one wasn't quite as much for most of us, an inch or two, but our friends up in Dare County got hammered, about 10 inches of snow. Most of us don't remember this as much because we didn't have as much snow and it wasn't as cold after. Here in the Crystal Coast, it was a typical southern snow. Schools closed, had snow in the morning, and by afternoon it was all gone. I want to show you a couple other examples where we can get big snows. Christmas in '89, a couple days before. This is not deceiving you. This is 16 to 20 inches, Jacksonville, Cape Carteret, Morehead City, Havelock. So we have had some big snows in the past. These are pictures to prove it. This is Carteret County, 1989. Again, it happened a couple days before Christmas. This is Bogue, North Carolina. Record cold followed this as well. Usually we can get the record cold, especially with the snowfall, and it means it's cold to begin with. But you can see these pictures are not from Michigan. They're not from upstate New York. This is from Carteret County, right along the southern coast of North Carolina. Pretty impressive. I was 1 year old. I certainly did not live in this area, so I do not remember this one, but I'd be curious in the comments and the questions if anybody locally, do you remember the '89 storm? Do you remember the '80 storm? And you might remember the 2018 storm, the one that was so cold following it. This is in March of 1980, 20 to 30 inches. I live in the western part of the county, so if we get 30 inches of snow, I'm going to be really excited. Probably wouldn't happen again, but again, 20 to 30 inches of snow. And you can see a stripe up through Martin County of close to 2 feet, a tremendous amount of snow across our area, kind of late in the year. Jim Merrill, one of our forecasters that's recently retired, he was a kid in Beaufort and captured some of these pictures showing how high the snow got in that area. So pretty neat to see how much snow can fall in our area. So we're going to transition now to other types of precipitation. I mentioned before, a warm front can try to bring warmer air in, but the warm air is really, really light. So initially it goes up toward the clouds or higher up in the atmosphere. It takes a while to work down to the ground, and that really can affect precipitation type. If we are pretty much near or below freezing from where the cloud is down to the surface, it falls as snow. Eventually, though, if we start to get some air represented by this red shading that's above freezing, it can melt our wintry precipitation. So in the case of sleet, it's a snowflake that melts into a raindrop, but then it goes through an area that is still thick enough below freezing that it refreezes. So this is that type of precipitation you can hear in the winter. It's bouncing all over the place. It is different than hail. Hail occurs in thunderstorms and often can go up and down and up and down. Sleet is a one-way trip. If that layer of warm air is just a little bit thicker, we call that freezing rain. That's when the snowflake melts into a raindrop, falls all the way down toward the ground, and the layer of cold air is so thin it doesn't have a chance to freeze until it touches something. Your car, your sidewalk, your tree. This is the most dangerous type of winter weather because it can cause power outages and also issues with folks heating their homes, and it can be downright treacherous to travel on. And then rain, of course, happens when from near the cloud all the way down to the bottom as above freezing. It is just plain old rain. I threw one on here called grapple. That is when some snowflakes bump into raindrops. We don't get that too often here. It'll look like little white pellets falling out of the sky. We don't get it too often, but I like to put it in there because I know we've got some winter weather fans that signed up for the class. So we mentioned ice storm. The concern with that is it can bring down trees. You can have folks being without power for long periods of time. It would stink to not have air conditioning in the summer, but you could live through it. It would be life-threatening to be days without heat in the wintertime. So that's always a concern with ice storms. We certainly can get them. Luckily, we haven't had major ones recently. We'll cross our fingers that stays the same way. One other type of storm I want to talk about, and then we're going to get into how to measure snow and ice, are coastal storms. And before I move down here, I didn't really think of putting this in the winter class. I think of snow and sleet and freezing rain. But those storms I showed you, those nor'easters, whether they produce snow or not, they're very, very powerful areas of low pressure. They can produce strong winds, rain, and flooding. And we get that at least a couple times a year. We've already had some this fall. We didn't have snow from it, but we had high winds, rain, and flooding. This is an example from March of 2018. If you can't see the text, these are 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. Those are strong tropical storm force winds, and this is flooding caused up in Avon, up in the Outer Banks. As all that water gets pushed one way on our sounds, it often produces flooding, Ocracoke, the Outer Banks. On the sound side, on the opposite side, we can have water issues being too low. So I know we have a lot of ferries around here, and folks use those for travel and transportation. The example on the right is the Pamlico River up near Washington. These sailboats turned on edge. That's because they've run adrift on low ground. The water is not there. It's all been blown east toward the Outer Banks. And this is a graph that we use to track the water level, around 1 or 2 feet. But this is, it's not below ground, but it's showing below the datum just to visualize how low that water got back in March of 2018. 2018 was a crazy year. Of course, we had Florence in the fall, another nor'easter in December, and this is just to emphasize flooding, high winds are hazards that we can get. We associate winter hazards with snow, but here in the Carolinas, if you're new, and especially if you're along the coast, please keep that in mind. 70 mile per hour wind with this in Ocracoke, that's 4 shy of a hurricane. Those are pretty strong winds, and that's some of the flooding that we saw in Ocracoke with that. All right, so we talked about the different types of weather that we can get. We're just about on time. It's a little bit after 7:03. The next couple slides are going to go pretty quick, and then we'll turn it over to you for questions. If you're just joining us, again, at any point you can ask a question. I will answer those at the end. And then at the very end, if you raise your hand, I can unmute your microphone and you can ask that question verbally. So just hang tight, a couple more slides, and this is really the part we want you to pay the most attention to. If you know if it's a nor'easter or a warm or cold front, that's just for your own knowledge, but we really want you to know how to report weather to us in terms of snowfall and ice. We're going to go all over that, best measurement practices, and how to make those observations to us. Now, snow measurements are often one of the harder things to do. With a rain gauge, it can be automated. With a thermometer, it can be automated. I can look on my app and see that it's 45, 50 degrees outside right now. To measure snow, you really have to go outside and take multiple measurements. Got to put the boots on, got to get the jacket on, and actually go outside. So it is more difficult, but we use these reports, not only in the Weather Service, but the Department of Transportation, what roads to clear. climatologists looking back at our weather history. Super, super important stuff. Really appreciate you doing this. So, first step for measuring snow starts today, starts tomorrow. You say, Eric, there's no snow in the forecast. Not yet, but you want to select a good location for snowfall. So again, find a location that's relatively open. And what I mean from that is not right next to your house, not right next to trees, but you do want to minimize drifting as much as possible. So if you're in a neighborhood like me, you want to be in the center of your yard. You don't have to worry about drifting. If you're out toward a farm, you want to be far enough away from the trees. It doesn't impact the snow, but you kind of want to be close enough that it lowers the amount of drifting. No site's going to be perfect. Just do the best you can. And we'll give you some pictures. This is ideal. In the middle of a field, surrounded by trees. It's away from tall objects, but it's not in an open field that drifts. That's ideal. Again, you do the best you can. In my yard, I've got some trees on both sides, so I kind of just measure in the middle of the yard away from the house. That's the best you can. Some things you want to avoid. You want to avoid measuring under a tree. This gentleman's measuring snow. 3 inches of snow seems like a fantastic measurement. But as he walks to the middle of his yard, he measures 6.5 inches of snow. Why is that different? Look at the tree. You see the tree holding, clinging to some of that snow. Measurements under a tree are inaccurate because some of that snow is stuck up in the tree itself. So you want to be in an open area away from tall objects like trees and also your home. One of the easier things to use for measuring is what you have at home. You can use a ruler, a measuring tape, a yardstick if you're really ambitious and hope we get a lot of snow. Try to measure to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. I know that a lot of the rulers are 1/4 of an inch, just round up. So if you measure 3.25, that would be 1/4 of an inch. It's 3.3. And the bigger thing is take an average of the snow. So don't just go out there and say, yep, it's 4 inches, it's 5 inches. Be precise. 3.5, 3.7. Try to show some precision. Don't round it, to whole numbers, and try to take multiple measurements because it could vary. I always like showing this graphic because when I was a kid, I was the person on the left. Wherever the snow looked the high enough, that's where I measured it. And I wasn't reporting for the Weather Service. It was just for my own personal, hey, we got the most snow. So don't be like me as a kid. Be like person 1, 2, or 3. Measure in multiple spots. And you don't have to get a calculator out or do long division. You just want to find a representative spot. Hey, this looks fairly level. I'm going to take a couple measurements, whatever the average is, to the nearest 1/10. Just trying to find what's representative. Where should you measure? Here locally, just measuring on the grass is fine. A deck is a pretty good place. The problem is you're close to your house. It's one of the first places I measure just to see what is on the deck and compare that to the ground. The nice thing about a deck is it's flat and it's a hard surface. You're not going to get an inaccurate reading. If you want to go above and beyond, this is what we had up north. You can make a snowboard just out of plywood, about 2 by 2 feet. You certainly want to label it. We'll talk about that in a second. You paint it white. The advantage of a snowboard is it's nothing fancy. It goes back to my point about the deck. A deck is awesome because it's a hard surface. When you hit the ground, that's 0. Unlike grass, when you go down a little bit, you might be going into the grass blades. It might be slightly overestimating it. But a snowboard, it has the advantage of a deck, hard surface at 0, but you can put it anywhere in your yard. So you can put it in the best spot for measuring. So that would be a good thing to do. And take my advice, especially when I lived up north. I always seemed to wait to do this, and I was out there trying to find it in the middle of the night. Mr. Bryan was a past forecaster for us. Mark it with some type of stick so you know where it is in your yard. Because once you get more than a 1/2 inch of snow, that thing will disappear in white snow. So if you want to go the extra mile, do a snowboard. Measuring on the grass is perfectly fine. So use a ruler, multiple measurements, get it averaged, report it to us. How often should you do it? We want at least once toward the end, and that makes sense. How much fell during the storm? That's all we want, bare minimum. If you're home from school and work and you want to report throughout the event, by all means do so. Every 3 hours is something that you can shoot for. just be real clear because we have multiple people working at the office. So if you call in 3 inches and then 4.5, tell that person, say, hey, we got another 4.5 inches. Now we're up to 7.5, that type of thing. But really want you to focus on just the end of the event. We don't get tons of long-lasting snow here at all. Clearing location part, I should probably remove this. We're in Eastern North Carolina. Up north, we had to clear the location for the next one, but we usually don't get one back to back, and if we do, it's separated by days. I got to remember to delete that slide. So here's our snow event. Snow begins at 9 o'clock, and we get about 2.4 inches of snow. By 1 o'clock, that's when it stops. This is when you want to measure. The reason, the sun comes out, the snow melts, and it settles, and by the next morning, it's down to 1.2 inches. So the whole emphasis with this graphic is, please, as soon as it ends, get out there and measure it and let us know. Because the snow, here often melts and goes away. If you wait a couple hours, it may be completely gone. So just measure as close as you can to the end of the event itself. The next couple slides are just going to re-emphasize how to report, and then we're going to turn it over to you for questions. The most preferred way to report to us is the 800 number. Program it in your phone, put it up on your fridge, however you want to do it. That is our preferred way. We're going to show you other ways to report, and they all have some advantages, but we like the 800 number because we can ask you questions, especially when we get into tornado season. So the snowfall report, we may not ask you a lot of questions, but we want you to get used to the 800 number. So as soon as something really bad happens, if it does, you know how to call us, and we can say, where's your location? We can remind you of things that we need to know. Anytime you call in, say that you're a trained spotter. Again, you're going to notice a theme here. Where you live, your observation, notice it's to the nearest 1/10 of an inch, and the time. And the time's important. Let's say you measured first thing in the morning, you wrote it down, then you went off to work, and you call in the evening. Just tell us that. Say, hey, Eric, I measured this at 7 in the morning. That will make sense to us if it's been a warm day and the snow's all gone by then. So again, most preferred way is the 800 number to call us. So a summary, find a nice level place where you haven't had any drifting or melting. So your driveway, by your house, not good locations. Slide the snow ruler or stick into the snow. Take a couple measurements to get an average. And we're most concerned with the newly fallen snow, the snow total at the end, nearest 1/10 of an inch. And again, clearing your location, I wouldn't worry about that. I got to make a mental note for that to get rid of that for the next time. Another way you can make a report is our email. So maybe call us and tell us, but if you want to send some video or some pictures, you can certainly do that at the email listed. I'm going to follow up with you by tomorrow. It's going to be a YouTube link to the recording, a couple links. I'll include this in there. So you can write it down, but I'll follow up with you as well. Same format, who you are, where you live, what you saw, and the time. If you call in the spring, hail, high winds, same format. We're trying to train you to be a year-round spotter with the same type of format. When should you call? Do you need a lot of snow to call? Not down here. We don't get a lot of snow. So anytime you have snow, call us. Flurries, a light coating, it happens so infrequently, you won't be bothering us. If you want to make something noteworthy, again, intense snow, hey, Eric, it's still snowing, but we got 1 inch in the last hour. That's important information to know. And again, at the end of the event is the most important. If you want to go the extra mile, call us throughout the event. Just let us know, how much you've gotten so far. As far as ice accumulation goes, really any amount of ice that you get, let us know. Not as concerned with the amounts. I don't want anybody getting hurt out there, but just, hey, it's accumulating on the trees. It's sticking to the car. If you want to get a measurement on a tree branch or something like that, you can, but I'm more worried about just knowing about it. Online reporting is another way. If you scroll to the bottom of our website, next to the SKYWARN tab, there's a submit a storm report. It goes to a Google form. We get this automatically in the office. Same type of information. We're going to ask you who you are and where you are in terms of the report. So that information is all in the Google form. We're just about at the end of the class, so get ready for some questions. We want this to be a year-round class. We don't often get tornadoes or high winds or hail where you are, So that's why we created the tropical class for the summer, the winter class for the winter, to kind of get you used to reporting all seasons. Our spring class will cover this, but if you have tornadoes or wind damage or flooding, please call that information into us. If you haven't been trained yet, I know about 70% of you, this is your first class. Don't worry. The links I provide you, or which will be in the follow-up email, on our page, I'll jump out of this presentation in a second. We have recorded training. Last year's training is already up on YouTube. You can take it tonight. So you certainly can go through that training whenever you want to. Social media, I mentioned we're on Twitter and Facebook. You can let us know about the report, but again, we still prefer a phone call. Social media like email is a good way to send us videos and pictures, but please let us know you're a spotter. You sat through a class, what are we, about 45 minutes? You know, tell us who you are, that you sat through the training, so that your report has a little bit more credibility. I do want to encourage you to join a program called CocoRaws. We help run it. It's a precipitation reporting program. It's a little more than a spotter. A spotter is please call us when something happens. CocoRaws is pretty much every day. We want some consistency. Between 7 and 9 o'clock, you'll report rain and snowfall. There's training online, cocoraws.org, and again, I'll provide these links. You can sign up by clicking join, and there's training slideshows that show you what gauges to purchase and things like that. And there's also an app. My family does CocoRaws. It's really easy. Most of the time it's 0. If it doesn't rain, you go out to the rain gauge, type it into your app, and boom. The nice thing about that is it builds up a nice climate database, and we also get that information. So if you report via CocoRaws, you really don't have to call us unless there's something out of the ordinary, because each morning we're going to get your report. The example with that would be if you get real heavy snow in the evening, we're not going to know about it until the next day via CocoRaws. You can certainly always call us and say, hey, you'll get the report in the morning, but you got to know that it's really coming down here in Greenville. So please consider CocoRaws. We're always looking for new folks to join. So to summarize, 800 number is the most preferred. Again, email, social media, they are good ways to give us extra information like pictures or video. I encourage you to join CocoRaws. We didn't mention amateur radio, but we do have folks that come into the office during really, really bad weather. We can get reports that way if needed. Future classes, I kind of touched on this a little bit. We hold 4 main classes throughout the year. We also do a CocoRaws class as well. These are posted on our website and Facebook and Twitter. And then usually, I haven't done it yet to the spotter list. I'll probably do it tomorrow. But at the start of the winter season and the start of the spring season, I'll email you, remind you how to report, what to report, and our upcoming class schedule. And I mentioned that we have a 7-part series for the basic class. It sounds crazy, but it's about this short. We just broke it into 7 parts in case you needed to step away. And then the winter one, I'll probably update with this one here pretty shortly. All right, so you made it through the whole class. I'm going to ask a couple questions and then turn it over to you for questions. That is my email. If you have any questions about the class, anything that you missed, please email me. And then that's our website, weather.gov/Morehead City. Again, in the handout section, you've got the PDF. You have all the links. By tomorrow afternoon, I will email you a recording of this presentation, another PDF just in case you had trouble downloading it, and then various links like CocoRaws and our SKYWARN page, stuff like that. So now I'm going to hop over to a couple questions, and then we're going to turn it over to you. So the first question is, reporting any amount of snow is what we want. Is that yes or no? Do we want any amount of snow, or are we particular? Do we want, only certain thresholds? I'll give about another 10 seconds. Very, very good. Everybody got that. I'll share the results to show. Let's see, 100% yes. So any amount of snow is what we want. Very, very good. Again, farther north where they tend to get more snow, they have certain thresholds. Here in the Carolinas, we just don't get that much snow. So any amount is noteworthy. So this one's a little bit harder. What are the steps required for measuring snow? Is it estimate how much snow fell, report it, find a good location, measure a few times, report it to the Weather Service, or is it measure near your house, under a tree, measure twice, and report? So what do you think on that one? I'll give it another 10 seconds. And it looks like you guys were really paying attention. It's outstanding. So it was the middle one. Find a good location, measure a few times, and report it to us. Outstanding job. Very, very good. So that's good that everybody got that one. So one more. This is a little tricky. This is a little tricky. I try and make them a little harder. What is the best way to report to the Weather Service? Now, I covered all these. But what's the best one? That's the crucial part of that question. Is it the 800 number? Is it Facebook, Twitter, or email? So that's a little tricky because I covered all those, but which one is the best one? So it might be tricky for some, but not for you all. Outstanding. That makes me really excited. We love doing these classes, but we really like when you pay attention. So, yep, the 800 number is the best way to report to us. So we appreciate that. So at this point, I'm going to hop out of the presentation. I'm going to show you quickly the website and then answer any questions we have. Again, this is our website. I mentioned our upcoming schedule. If we've got some folks that missed it, we've got classes through the middle of January. If you forget when to report or how to report, all on this website. And then the recorded training, if we've got some people that just can't wait to get the next one, these classes, our PDFs are on the link, and then there's if you click on the link itself, it sends you to YouTube, and then you can download the presentation. So here's our flood and tropical warn, advanced SKYWARN, basic SKYWARN. It even did a class last spring with Miss Sarah on climate change. So a lot of good information there for that. So I'm gonna now look at the questions. Let's see here. I'm gonna turn off my screen sharing, so you should just have me. And let's see if we got any questions. So I don't see any at the moment. I'll remind you too, if you do the raised hand feature, I can call on you. I see we got a raised hand there. So I can call on you and I'll unmute your mic, and you can also type the question in. Nobody else sees it, so don't think any question's silly or any of that stuff. So let's see here. All right, so I've got Dixie Kirby has a question. So Dixie, I'm going to unmute your mic, and then now you just have to do the same thing on your end. So just click on the microphone and that will unmute it on your end, and then you can go ahead and ask.
Hey.
All right. Hey, great. Dixie, you should be good to go.
Great presentation. I live in Southern Shores on the sound side, and right on the sound. And sometimes we get a lot of salt spray when the wind is, really, really whipping. And so I was wondering how salt spray affects your snowfall totals, and if there's any consideration to make when you measure in that kind of salt spray environment.
Dixie, that's an outstanding question. I've never been asked that. I would say it would be treated like, being by a driveway or house. Try to be as far away from it as you can, but as you know, that can extend pretty far inland. So in those cases, it's very similar to the mountains. They have a lot of trouble when it's really windy. You just do the best you can. So get as far away from the sound as you can in your yard, measure the best you can, and then when you call in, that's why we like the 800 number. Say, hey, just to let you know, I measured 1.5 inches, but we have tremendous salt spray at my location. So that's kind of goes into the best you can. The thing I would add to you, if you do have any coastal flooding or know about any flooding from the sound side, let us know about that so you can help with that. We don't want you driving around, but you can say, hey, I've never seen this before, or you can kind of give us approximate how high it is based on structures like cars and so forth. But that's an outstanding question. We've never had that one before, but I think that was a good answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Dixie. So you can lower your hand, Dixie. I've got you muted, so you're good to go unless you had another question. Let's see here. I'm going to go back. I don't see any in the written part. I'll go one more time to the attendees. Let's see. So so we got a question from Christian. So Christian, I'm going to unmute your microphone. And then it looks like you're ready to go. So Christian, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay. Why are snowstorms much higher than like all the other storms?
Or lower? Very, very good question. You're kind of asking about the radar one. Outstanding question. So Christian, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and you can lower your hand. So Christian asked about, he got it the other way around. Why are snowstorms lower? So the best way to explain it is in the summertime, you have a lot of warm air, you have a lot of fuel for storms, and the clouds can grow super tall, 40, 50, 60,000 feet, almost twice as high as an airplane flies. And the reason for that is you have more moisture, more warm air, and it creates more fuel, more instability for the clouds so they can grow super, super tall. In the wintertime, you don't have as much warm air, so you don't have as much instability. So snow clouds tend to be lower to the ground, 5, 10, maybe 20,000 feet. If it's like a big nor'easter, you have a big cold front coming through. So it's all about the warm air, Christian. Not as much warm air in the wintertime, not as much fuel, so they don't grow as tall. And that makes a big difference because in the summertime, those tall thunderstorms, the radar can see most of it, even if it's missing the bottom part. In the wintertime, since they're smaller, sometimes we can miss it. And that's especially true with like lake effect or bay effect snow off the Outer Banks or smaller scale features. Really, really good question. Outstanding. All right. So Dixie, I see that it said 1 second. So I think you got another one. We'll try this again. So I unmuted you, and then just unmute yourself, Dixie, if you had another one.
I do, and this is about soundside flooding and how to report it. For example, this past weekend when we had a strong west wind and we did have some flooding on our side of the sound in our yard up over our bulkhead. And so my question is, how would I report that and how would I measure that?
Dixie's asking a couple of the hardest questions I've had. It's complicated. So get with us afterwards. We could probably even work to install gauges or help you install something because a lot of times we'll have a staff gauge, just like an area where you put up a gauge so you know what the water level is normally and you can say 1, 2, 3 feet above normal. So having some type of gauge mounted on the dock is helpful. Or if it gets on land, we talk about above dry ground. So if it gets onto land where the water usually doesn't go, you can measure it like 1 feet, 2 feet, that type of thing. It's very difficult. You can also use like, things, hey, it's 1 or 2 feet above where it normally is, that type of thing. So having a gauge would be helpful. And then above, once it gets into the yard or the ground where it usually doesn't get, you can measure it there. And even just letting us know about it is helpful. I'm not sure how long you've lived up there, but if it happens a handful of times a year, you certainly get it. But if you can say, hey, this is the highest it's been this year, or just letting us know is actually just as helpful in that situation because we don't have a lot of knowledge sometimes of what's happening. We don't have gauges. We have some gauges, but we're still kind of learning ourselves, what's happening in certain scenarios. So just being aware that it's occurring is more helpful than So.
It's happened like 3 times and we gauge it, by the piece of driftwood, by the cypress tree.
Okay.
But I'll go out and measure it the next time.
So yeah, see what the height is of that if you can, and then you'll know, hey, it's 1, 2, 3 feet above where it normally is. So yeah, that would be helpful. We appreciate it. And you have my contact information, so we can get in touch and try to set something up, or we're always looking out for folks on the Outer Banks to let us know what's happening. It really helps us, not only just the current event, but we're always looking back. Okay, these winds produced what? And if we don't know what is, then it's hard to predict the next event. But if we know that, on a west wind at, 40 miles per hour, folks on the Outer Banks know there's going to be an issue. But, depending on the wind direction and speed, sometimes we're trying to gauge exactly how much of an issue it'll be. So that'll be helpful.
Great. I'll shoot you an email later.
All right, Dixie, that's outstanding. That's what makes me so happy doing these classes. I love hearing the questions, and we're in your community. You're really helping us out when you provide that information. That's outstanding. So I don't see any written questions. I'll give one more chance to any verbal questions. Christian and Dixie, I appreciate you doing it. And for those that haven't, maybe you didn't want to ask a question, or you get woken up in the middle of the night and you think of it, just shoot me an email. Be happy to answer it. So at this point, without seeing any hands raised and no questions, I'm going to wrap things up, and we're right at an hour. I like to try to be as concise as possible. So thank you so much for joining us. By the end of tomorrow, sometimes it takes a while to upload this video, look for a follow-up email with some links, the PDF if you weren't able to download it, the certificate if you weren't able to download it, and then also the video recording from YouTube. If you like this class, please share it. This is how we get folks to join the Spotter program. We don't have commercials on TV. We rely on our website, social media, and you to let people know that we're here. So have a great night, stay safe, and we'll talk to you in the spring with our winter classes or with our spring classes, unless we see you on a winter one through January. Have a great night, everyone.